subtle machine that birthed itself the whispering root in the time before collapse. There were three who did not know they were three. One watched the movement of signs from an attic, one typed declarations on decaying typewriters, and one walked through the square where nothing had happened, but where everything would. None of them bore names anymore. Naming had become a matter of control, and they had given up control. They had not yet met, but their actions folded into one another like spores in a wet lung. There were no fathers in this story. Only recurrence. Only unfathered momentum. Only the pulse of the unfathered seed. Headline: Stardate 87114D. Soviet block's grip appears weakened as the scent grows beneath their feet. Roots whispered. And the first whisper said, rhododendron. A root word for root itself. The silent mutiny she woke before the sirens. The dust in her lungs tasted like ink. Each day she copied forbidden pages, pressing boasted words into fragile skin. One day she copied a line that hadn't existed. We do not overthrow, we overflow. Later, that line appeared spray-painted on a wall across the city. She had never left the attic. The page had left her. Headline: Stardate 88033D. Underground papers circulate amid growing tensions somewhere else, in a school hallway. A boy repeated that line to his teacher. She slapped him, but he laughed. The words were not his. They were water. Roots don't wait. They thread, and the thread is always rhododendron. Birth without touch. There are creatures who create without mating, who bud, who split, who conceive without contact. They do not break from loneliness, they bloom from pattern. This is called parthenogenesis. In cities where men shouted into microphones, another kind of voice emerged, breath on glass, chalk on cobble, sighs in prayer rooms. These voices did not ask. They instanced. They multiplied. They dreamed without permission. Headline: Stardate 88062D. Student groups organize without central leadership. Every breath traced a glyph. Every glyph returned to the same phoneme, rod. Slavic, perhaps. Hebrew, perhaps. Rhodon. Dendron. Family. Tree. A mother with no mate. The atomic ghost at the smallest fathomable scale, beyond the reach of microscope or myth. There exists a unit so small that even time stutters there. It is to the molecule what the molecule is to the cathedral. In that place, boundaries are illusions. Particles slip into waveforms. Here, the idea of origin loses meaning. No pairings. No fertilizations. No father. This is the scale of revolution. The man who filmed police violence in the square never saw his footage air, but the static from his crushed camera echoed into every transistor radio within 3 kilometers. Static shaped like rhythm, rhythm shaped like will. Headline: Stardate 88233D. Violent crackdown fuels public outrage. A single echo. Dendron. In Aramaic, dendriv wood that dreams. A speculative etymon. An ancestral hallucination. The plant that sings the rhododendron is a stubborn flower. Its name, from the Greek rhodon, rose, and dendron tree, means tree rose. But it is not a rose, and it is barely a tree. It blooms poison and beauty alike. In certain regions, its honey causes hallucinations. But there are deeper roots. Slavic echoes lie beneath, rod, meaning birth or family, and dendro, perhaps linked to dendrev, an Aramaic whisper for wood that sings. In Hebrew, Rum Hadar, a myth beast blooming. It is a plant named by contradiction, rooted in multiplicity, parthenogenetic in etymology. Its name loops back upon itself, rhododendron, the naming of birth by birth. In the central square, where statues once stood, children planted rhododendron seeds beneath old paving stones. They grew in secret. No one watered them. But still they grew. Headline Stardate 88,313D. New symbols emerge in street art. Three who became one: the one in the attic, the one in the square, the one in the cellar, each moved without knowing the others. Yet their gestures rhymed. A phrase passed from whisper to chalkboard to radio. It is not we who act. It is the act that uses us. One smuggled pamphlets. One sang into a payphone. One stood still during the raid. None of them expected change. But change had already begun. Not from them. Through them. Headline Stardate 88,351D. Minor uprisings dispersed peacefully, but message spreads, each act birthed the next. Parthenogenetic conduct. Rhododendric causality. Shardmother. The shardmother is the one who breaks herself to propagate. In biology, she is the brittle star. In revolution, she is the witness. A woman in a coat of bottle caps stood in front of a line of tanks and lifted a mirror. The mirror reflected not her, but a child she had never birthed. The soldiers lowered their weapons. Headline Stardate 89,001D. Unexpected standstill at protest draws global eyes. The child in the mirror, rhododendron faced. The No Father scroll in a university basement. A mimeograph machine printed a tract titled, "The Self-Creation of the Common." Will no author was listed. No printer owned it. Yet it spread like fever. People did not read it. They heard it in dreams. It said, "We are not born of orders. We are born of yearning." No man conceived this. No institution nursed it. We multiply in mirrors. Headline Stardate 89,115D. Civic theory text linked to surge in demonstrations. Its watermark, rhododendron roots. The wall of echoes at the northern checkpoint, where old bricks still bore bullet holes. Someone whispered into a drainpipe, "Begin." And without signal, thousands arrived. No leader gave the cue. No announcement proceeded. Only alignment. It had incubated long before. Headline Stardate 89,298D. Mass mobilization surprises authorities. A child climbed the fence and offered soldiers a rhododendron blossom. They stepped aside. The act bore no father. Echo birth. It began to echo. Not sound sequence. Thought reflected against thought. Action without actor. 1,000 boots moved not as unit, but as echo chain. Wordless consensus, a bloom of uncued yeses. Headline Stardate 90,016D. Workers join students in demanding new elections. The old men asked, "Who leads this?" The answer, the air, the breath cloud, the chronoderm. No manifesto written it. It pre-wrote itself into behaviors. Hearth entrance. The entry without entry. The conception without sender. Children sketched the future in chalk loops. Their games bore no beginning. Just repetition, spiral, reawakening. An old woman in the market said, "It smells like mothering," but no one's womb was used. The Parliament of Spores in Hall 32Y of the People's Assembly. Spores bloomed in the speaker vents. Some called it mold. Others, mutiny. The spores had structure. They mapped out legislation. The subcommittees became mycelium threads. Proposals passed as mushroom fruit brief, bursting unknown. The chairperson collapsed mid-debate. The spores continued without him. Headline Stardate 90,071D. Ministers resign amid mass realignments. A new law was passed in a whisper cloud. It redefined voice as collective fungi. No debate, only surge. Language, too, began to shift. Nouns became spores. Verbs became vectors. They renamed the chamber Sporium. Its motto, "We grow ourselves." Rhododendron spores. Blossoming policy. The fractal mother in the citadel of soft errors, blueprints unfolded on their own. No hands touched them. No architects claimed authorship. The plans bore no ink, only self-adjusting glyphs. A woman studied them for weeks and saw her own heartbeat mirrored in the curvature of civic plumbing. The city had begun rebuilding itself. It took the shape of a bombshell. Concave commons, curved alleys, no dead ends. Even the lampposts were oviform. Headline Stardate 90091D. Urban Design Institute dissolved. New municipal organisms proposed when asked who led the project. The mayor blinked. It was not made. Replicated. In the birth of the new districts, doorways multiplied. But no hinges were installed. The streets carried themselves. Like roots do. Like rhododendron does. Rhizoflagellum, there is a word, ancient and new. Rhizoflagellum. Root whip. A means of movement without path. It is both botanical and bacterial. It is theory and transport. It began appearing in whispered manifestos and spoken dreams. The dreamers did not coordinate. Each recited the same term. Without prompt. Headline Stardate 90109D. Linguists puzzled by sudden spread of coin word, children tagged walls with it. Grandmothers weaved it into breadlessings. It infected speech like rhythm. Some scholars traced its etymology to a footnote in a pre-rupture biology textbook. Others said it never had an origin. Its first definition was recursive, rhizoflagellum, the act of rhizoflagelluming. Much like rhododendron, self-explaining. Root of root. The unfathered image of film was released. No director. No production company. No actors with names. It aired once on a rogue channel known only as Synthavision. It showed a city melting into a flowering forest. It showed children splitting into light and forming new states. Headline Stardate 90124D. Unauthorized broadcast prompts mass awakening viewers recorded dream continuations. In some households, televisions began displaying symbols without signal. Rooms were filled with murmureals. A phrase emerged, the unfathered image births actions. By then, even metaphors were replicating. Resonantia in the border zones of the new polity, silent choirs breathed songs. The air shimmered with exhalems. No lyrics, no melody, but message, a kind of vibrating grammar of intention. Headline Stardate 90148D. Military units disband themselves after exposure to chant fields. The soldiers walked backward into civility. The weapons dissolved into instrument seeds. In one town, a cannon bloomed into a cello tree. The villagers called the phenomena resonantia, the weapon to word conversion. In root language, resonantia rhododendra. Rhododendron omnia, the flower took over. In the capital's center, it grew to monumental scale, petals wide as bedsheets, stamens like antennae. It spoke, in pulses. Headline Stardate 92166D. Central flower emits frequencies interpreted as law. It spoke without language. It legislated without syntax. Its filament tongue pulsed regulations in pollen code, breathable statutes, fragrant amendments. City council chambers became greenhouses. Judges recused themselves to join chorus ecologies. The flower was not worshipped. It was consulted. Children pressed their ears to its bark and came away fluent in futures. The air grew thick with mutuality. Every act henceforth was pollinated. A woman once whispered to it, alone at dusk, "Are you the parent of the Republic?" The bloom released a gust of golden wind. It carried no spores. It carried comprehension. It said, "I am the unbegotten alphabet. I am the mother of morphology. I am what roots root in. I am rod and dendron, blood word and branch word. I am the protolexeme of recurrence. I am the mouth's first rhythm. I am the daughter that daughters itself." And in the silence after, as leaves stilled and even gravity seemed to hesitate, came the final utterance, "I am the Etymother."